Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye calls on Parliament to pass the government's 4 major reforms for the sake of the economy. She also stands by the reintroduction of state-authored history textbooks. China reacts angrily after a US warship enters disputed waters in the South China Sea. Washington's defense chief says more sail-bys will happen. Plus, a new World Bank report says South Korea is the 4th easiest place in the world to do business. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, October 28th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. And we start at Korea's National Assembly, where President Park Geun-hye has given a speech on the government's budget plan and pending national issues. Addressing lawmakers on Tuesday, the president also vowed to stick to her guns on reintroducing a state-authored history textbook into the nation's secondary schools. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
President Park laid out the government's budget plan and policy goals for next year in her speech before the National Assembly on Tuesday. But she also had other objectives in mind, including urging lawmakers to swiftly pass a handful of key bills.
우리 경제의 활력을 불어넣고 청년들에게 일자리를 주기 위한 중요한 경제 활성화 법안들이 수년째 처리되지 못하고 아직까지 국회에 계류되어 있습니다.
One is a bill aimed at improving the service industry, which has been held up at the National Assembly for 3 years. The president said a competitive service industry could create as many as 690,000 jobs. She also emphasized how costly a slow ratification of Korea's free trade agreements could be for exporters.
한중 FTA의 경우 비준이 늦어지면 하루 약 40억 원의 수출 기회를 잃어버리게 됩니다.
She also used the speech to address the controversial issue of state history textbooks. The government wants a single state-authorized history textbook for secondary schools to eliminate what it characterizes as left-leaning content in existing books. President Park addressed the opposition party's concerns on the issue.
일부에서 역사 교과서 국정화로 역사 왜곡이나 미화가 있지 않을까 우려하고 있지만 그런 교과서가 나오는 것은 저부터 절대로 좌시하지 않을 것입니다.
But whether the remarks were enough to win over opposition lawmakers on the controversial issue remains to be seen. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, the country's 2 main rival parties were quick to offer their opinion on the president's address. Given the level of bipartisan discord within the Assembly, it should come as little surprise that the parties appraised the speech rather differently. Park Ji-won has the details.
The ruling Saenuri Party welcomed the speech, vowing to support the president's agenda, including her 4 major reforms. The Conservative Party also called on the opposition to stop campaigning against the administration's decision to publish a single government-authorized history textbook and urged them to work with the government to find a resolution.
The main opposition party needs to put an end to all of the activities it is doing to raise eyebrows, such as inciting political strife and organizing protests. The parliament should support the president's efforts to govern with bipartisan cooperation for the public and the nation.
The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy slammed the president's address, saying her message had failed to provide any tangible hope or vision.
The president failed to offer a clear vision on how to overcome the current difficulties with the economy. It is also very hard to say whether the president's policies could ever resolve such pressing issues as youth unemployment.
Regarding the history textbook issue, the main opposition party said President Park is dividing the nation over the matter rather than normalizing history education. The Liberal Party stressed that the Park administration needs to halt its current efforts to control history textbook publication if the president really is aiming to unite the public on the matter. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, the geopolitical game of chicken between the United States and China just went up a couple of notches. China has slammed the United States for its, quote, provocative sail-by near disputed islands in the South China Sea. The guided missile destroyer USS Lassen breached the 12 nautical mile zone China claims around Subi and Mischief reefs in the Spratlys. China's foreign ministry says Beijing will resolutely respond to any country's deliberately provocative actions and summoned the US ambassador to protest. China's state broadcaster CCTV says Max Bacchus was told that the US should stop threatening Chinese sovereignty and security interests. The US aims to challenge China's claims over the artificial islands and one of the most important shipping routes in the world. Now, US Defense Secretary Ashton Carter confirmed on Tuesday that the USS Lassen had passed within 12 miles of the islands. He also said the US will carry out more operations of the same kind in the coming months. The death toll from the powerful earthquake which rocked northern Afghanistan and Pakistan has risen to at least 425. The figure includes 310 people who died in Pakistan and 115 in Afghanistan. The number of dead is expected to rise further as rescuers are finally getting through to remote villages and areas cut off by landslides. Now, hundreds of buildings were levelled as the initial magnitude 7.5 quake struck on Monday afternoon local time, and several powerful aftershocks have also hampered rescue efforts. South Korea is the fourth easiest country in the world to do business, according to a new report by the World Bank. The country edged up one notch on the 2016 edition of the World Bank's Doing Business report. Fourth is Korea's highest ever ranking in terms, in terms of the G20, in fact. It ranked first, and in the OECD it was third. The Finance Ministry added that the expansion of the country's economy helped Korea receive better results. The World Bank report ranks 189 economies in 10 different categories, including getting licensing approval, starting a business and ease of trading across borders. Singapore kept its lead in terms of business environment, followed by New Zealand. Staying with business news, and Samsung Electronics has been chosen as the most recognised brand in Brazil for the third straight year. According to Brazil's daily Folha de Sao Paulo, the Korean tech giant was named the winner of the 2015 Top of Mind Award, which has been recognising brands with top-of-mind awareness among Brazilian consumers. Samsung shared the top position in the main category with Coca-Cola, Nike, Nestle and a company called Omo. The recently completed round of reunions for Korea's war-torn families will very likely be the last for most, if not all, of the participants. Kwon So-ah met with one South Korean family that took part to hear about their experiences and what could be improved.
It's a rainy night. Kim Chang-geun and his two sons are back home after a visit with Kim's two younger brothers. It wasn't an ordinary family gathering. It was the first time Kim and his brothers had seen one another in more than 6 decades after they were separated by the Korean War. Kim was the first of more than 250 South Koreans to arrive at the meeting place in Sokcho last week ahead of the second round of reunions. The amount of time they had to catch up on things was only 3 days, or rather 12 hours, before having to say their goodbyes. Kim says it still breaks his heart.
자꾸 이렇게 날들을 물어보면 난 기분만 더 상해요, 시방. 알겠어요? 나 시방 걔들 그 생각만 하면 눈물이 그냥 나와.
아까 오면서 아버지 얘기했잖아요. 속에 있는 거 감추지 말고 그냥. 그게 여태까지 몇십 년을 묻어만 놓고 살았잖아요.
나 헤어질 때가 말이야. 걔들이 와서 유리창 두들기고 할 때가 내 가슴이 어떻는지 나 이런 하면은 시방 또 내 가슴은 뒤집어놓는 속이요.
What's more, Kim had to face the truth about the rest of his family when his North Korean brothers wrote down the family tree, one of the most important things the separated families do during the reunions.
내 동기간들 그게 다 죽고 둘 남았으니 나 따지고 보면 그 요거만한 그 전매기까지 했으니 7남매였었어요. 그러니까 6남매 남았는데 6남매에서도 이제 다 죽고서 나 이제 셋 남았어요.
Kim says despite being happy together, the irony was that they often ran out of topics to talk about, given how long they've been separated. Kim's son Jung-ho added that the atmosphere of the group meetings was something that could be improved.
들리지를 않을 정도로 이 한 90가족이 90테이블을 놓고 웅성웅성하니까 개별 상봉할 수 있는 시간이 마련되어 있는 것들이 좋은 부분이었는데 그럼에도 불구하고 아쉬웠던 부분들은 개별 상봉 부분이 너무 짧아요.
Kim and his family know that without reunification, there's hardly any chance they will see their relatives on the other side of the border again. But the 83-year-old doesn't ask for much.
편지 거래만 하게 되면 이 얼굴 한 번 보지 않아도 아무 상관없어. 여기 미국 가서 사는 사람들도 편지하고 하는데 뭐 그것만 되면 되는데 그게 안 돼가지고.
권소아, Arirang News.
Now, international experts on North Korea have jointly denounced the growing nuclear and missile threats and the dire human rights situation in the communist state at a seminar hosted by Johns Hopkins University's School of Advanced International Studies on Tuesday. US Senator Cory Gardner said Washington should take a more serious approach to confront North Korean threats as its policy of strategic patience had failed. He also said the US should be at the forefront of efforts to end the North's human rights abuses, saying they could face much greater challenges in the future if they do not act now. Robert King, US Special Envoy for North Korea's human rights issues, highlighted the country's political prison camps, saying the system remains brutal and inhumane. Now, Tuesday was Savings Day here in South Korea, and as it turns out, more Korean households are saving instead of spending, despite interest rates sitting at record lows. For more on why Koreans are putting money away for a rainy day, our Shin Se-min reports.
More and more Koreans are keeping their wallets closed and building up their savings instead. A recent report by the government and the Bank of Korea shows that the net savings rate for households was over 6% last year, an increase of 3 consecutive years. The net savings rate indicates the ratio of money households set aside from their disposable income. So why save up more cash, especially when the nation's key interest rate is at an all-time low?
I'm not married yet, so I'm saving up a third of my salary for a wedding later on.
I'm saving every penny so I can buy a house.
The country's rapidly aging population and a tighter job market has also prompted many to start saving up.
Even though consumer spending has picked up in the recent months, the looming uncertainties over the Korean economy are prompting Koreans to save for later.
On top of that, Korea's gross national income fell 0.1% in the second quarter of this year compared to the same period last year, indicating people are spending less to save more. Some even see the trend as a failure of the government's efforts to spur domestic spending, including a $19.5 billion stimulus package and a decrease in the consumption tax, while the central bank kept its key rate unchanged for 4 straight months at a record low of 1.5%.
But experts say that this greater savings trend does not pose massive problems, as only so much can be done to prop up growth through spending. They add that ultimately, exports need to expand to see significant growth in the Korean economy. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Thank you as always for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye.